International developments. Is Trump Putin's man in Washington? This is an opinion piece. I am moving all my videos to Dailymotion, which will include all World War II videos also, and I expect to have that done within maybe 1 to 2 months. All content will be found via the link I have provided in the description, in case you want to continue following me. The reason for my move is a direct response to the current US administration. While I do not directly cover Ukraine in this channel anymore, I could hardly not make a video about the latest developments. This is an opinion piece, but events are based on actual statements or actions. If you see, I think that is my opinion regarding what is happening. But in general, you should listen to this video as an opinion piece and nothing else. First of all, I never state that what the US administration is doing is the same as what everyone in USA thinks. I base my opinion on what people do or say, simple as that. So this video is not about USA as a country or the people living there. It is about the current US administration. Nothing more, nothing less. What has happened in the last couple of days? The US administration has held talks with Russia and basically given in to all Russian demands. The US team was described by several diplomats as amateurs regarding international negotiations. The US administration have also sent an agreement to Ukraine for them to sign, where Ukraine would give away almost all of their resources in perpetuity with no security guarantees. Later, Donald Trump echoed the Russian demand that Ukraine must hold elections, going so far as to call Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. He also stated that Zelensky only has a 4% approval rating and that Ukraine actually started the war, or that was the implication anyway. So let's cover some of the errors in the latest statements. Zelensky has been democratically elected, and new elections cannot be held during a state of emergency, all according to the Ukrainian constitution. It is the same way as any shooting in the USA that politicians would remove the right to bear arms from the constitution. And if that was possible, what is the point of a constitution? Why Russia wants new elections is because they want to get their man in power, like they did with Yanukovych. Now that is unlikely to happen in any case, except in the occupied areas of Ukraine, where Russia simply dictates what people should vote for. And likely this is what they hope to achieve. They want Ukraine, and the US administration is now actively helping them. The fact is, elections cannot be held, and they should not be held during a state of war. They could be held if Russia pulled out of all of occupied Ukraine, and then elections could be held and should be held, and I would support that. Trump is simply echoing the Russian standpoint. In reality, the US president is acting as a pro-Russian mouthpiece, and one must wonder why. It can simply not be in the best interest of the USA to do this, especially since we have Russian influence in US elections. Ukrainian President Zelensky in the latest polls now have an approval rating of 57%, up 5%. So where could Trump have gotten the 4% approval rating? Really only from Russia and Putin. Russia invaded Ukraine, And only Russia claims they did not start the war, which would be funny if the suffering they caused would not have been so heartbreaking. Trump is also echoing this, a Russian standpoint. Finally, Trump has stated, and I quote, Russia fought for the land in Ukraine and lost a lot of soldiers doing it, so Russia should keep it. That would be exactly like saying that Japan lost a lot of soldiers after attacking the USA during World War II, so they should simply have been allowed to keep that territory. There is no real difference between those two statements. As a European, my position is that the current US administration is now not only stepping away from helping Ukraine, but they are almost an active extension of Putin's hybrid warfare machine, which is aimed at Europe and Ukraine. I have already excluded the USA, again under the current administration, from taking any part in helping Ukraine. Now that could change in 4 years, but I rather doubt that the US-European relationship will really improve in the foreseeable future. It might, and one could hope, but I doubt that. I do not think that people in the USA in general want that. So from that point of view, the administration matters less. Again, it does not mean that everyone in USA is agreeing, but democracy is majority rule, and I suspect that the majority in the USA and its standpoint regarding Europe will actually remain. That is at least possible to probable, and so I have to work under that assumption. In reality, for people in the USA, the war in Ukraine matters much less than domestic politics. And I'm not sure they realize that what is happening now in a country far away from the USA will have far-reaching global conclusions. And that will directly impact people in the USA. The military situation is only one part. Canada is moving closer to Europe, while the US administration is trying to punish that country. The EU meeting in Paris included Canada, but not the USA. That will have an almost immediate impact on the USA, and Canada will not be the only country so affected that will try to find new countries to work with. The soft power the USA has had will also diminish, and like most other things, it takes a long time to build up, but it can very quickly disappear. Imagine all the movies where USA is the hero against some dictator, movies we all enjoyed, me included. Those movies will certainly be done still, but how they will be seen will be totally different. This does not mean that Hollywood movies will simply go away, but how people watch them and how much people watch them could. European defense will likely start moving away from US military hardware, because using it will directly impact European security, giving USA a say in European foreign policy. And once that is gone, it will not come back, because it takes decades to build it up, and European security will come into effect, and so pure economical considerations will have to stand back. We only have to look at Brexit to realize that, on a much smaller scale, of course. The UK voted to leave the EU, but had the assumption that it would not affect its economy. In other words, UK voters were under the assumption that UK politics were important, but EU politics were not. I 100% supported UK and its voters in their decision to leave the EU, but it was foolish to think that it would not have any impact on trade and the economy. The same is true on a much larger scale for the USA, but of course USA is a much stronger country than the UK was in relationship to the EU. What that impact will be, that is unknown. I'm not saying it will be easy for Europe, it will not by any means. It will definitely be very difficult for Ukraine. It will be difficult not only because the USA does not want to actively support Ukraine, but because they seem to actively be working against Ukraine. And the USA being the strongest country in the world, how could that be anything else but problematic, to say the least? I know that very many people in the USA are supporting Ukraine, and they also want to use facts. For that I'm grateful, and USA and the people in USA have done a lot for Ukraine. But 2 weeks from the current US administration has almost erased that, and maybe even made it worse. I have never said what the USA should do or how much they should support Ukraine. I have only stated that I think they should support Ukraine. I have pointed out it would be in their interest, but that was under the assumption that China was their biggest threat. And I'm not sure that is the case anymore. Also, I have no problem with people supporting Trump as long as they can base their opinions on facts. I would disagree, but I do not have any problem, except for when they have to lie or make false statements to support their case. And they have been struggling with facts, the same as pro-Russians have. If you cannot make your point without misrepresentation, is the point worth making? Personally, I think not. If the USA pulls away from Europe, which is likely, that is up to the USA. I cannot have any real opinion about that. Because USA has a democratically elected government. If I were against that, I would be against the very democracy I support 100%. However, when the US administration actively supports a dictatorship, that I will have an opinion on. If people supporting Trump or anyone else wants to attack this video, they should. And if you take some time to get some facts, you can do it much more effectively. If you use lies or misrepresentation and I see it and you don't clarify, I will block you as long as this channel is active, which will not be for that much longer. All of the above does not really have anything to do with the people that live in the USA. Like in any country, there are many good people and a few bad apples. Just the same is true for Sweden, Ukraine, or any other country in the world. The sad fact is what the US administration is doing will affect how all people are seen in the country. Personally, I think that is wrong, but that is just how the world works. USA have a lot of great people, and that includes people which I disagree with totally. And they are great because they have a conviction and they base that conviction on facts. And then we draw different conclusions. Such people I can talk with and even understand their point of view while I disagree. When it comes to propaganda, I have a problem, and that is true for people from Sweden, Ukraine, Russia, and the USA. It does not matter where the people are from. It is their opinion and what they base it on that matters. For me, propaganda is only white noise, taking time away from other more important things. How can you understand the world if you have to misrepresent what is happening? And how can you make some informed decision if you do? I understand that for people in the USA, USA is the most important, as it should be. As a Swede, Sweden, Europe and Ukraine is most important for me. But I will not lie to support that position. I might be wrong, I might have wrong information, and if I realize that, I will admit it. Such a conviction will need some action on my part, which is why I will move away from YouTube. Actions will always have implications, as Musk is now seeing regarding Tesla in Europe. Tesla sales in Europe after Musk's actions are down 70% in Spain, and the best development in Europe is in the UK, where sales only dropped 20%. It is not because he has an opinion, it is because he actively supports far-right parties with an agenda last seen in the 1930s Germany. Remember, Hitler came to power via democratic means, but he never had any democratic intentions. He is also against the European way regarding the labor market, and all of that is now having a direct financial impact. Now, Europe is not the biggest market, but it is an important market. And this is happening not because any government have pushed for it, but because the customers have made their choice. While the USA is the biggest economy by far, alienating the third biggest economy, which is the EU, will have an impact. In a trade war between the US and the EU, the US will win hands down. In a trade war with the US against everyone else, US will lose. Unless the whole world also becomes fragmented, and that I will work against. Personally, I'm very sad to see this development, because I want peace, and I want everyone's life to improve, and not the other way around. Collaboration could have made the world much safer, and USA could have been an integral part of that, as they have been before. Europe always needed to do much more, and they should have started that already in 2014, or really already in 2008. But that is not the reality, and I can only work within the new reality. So I will be moving all my videos to Dailymotion, not because I will have more viewers there, rather many fewer viewers. But I have to follow my conviction. Conclusion. Trump is now, by his own statements, in the Russian camp. That is simply a reality we in Europe have to react to. European politicians are urging us to stay cool, which is what they should say. But like two tectonic plates, Europe and US seems to be moving apart. What that will mean is impossible to say. Europe could suffer and US suffer less. Europe and US could maybe suffer equally, or maybe the US would suffer more and the EU less. The only thing that is clear right now is that Ukraine will suffer more, no matter what, and Europe can only really try to alleviate that right now. Europe will have to stand together, and that through its economy and military. And I see Ukraine as an integral part of that. Ukraine is Europe, and Europe is Ukraine. And I hope we will see concrete actions towards that. If that will happen remains to be seen. We do have some encouraging signs, but so much more is needed to be done. And again, to be clear, I'm not attacking people in the USA. I'm only attacking the actions of the current US administration and the people who support their foreign policy. Domestic US policy I just observe, and of course I have an opinion, but seldom I make it public. I don't feel that is my place. That is for the voters in the USA. And people in the USA, they are not a coherent entity. They are as varied as everywhere else, which includes Europe. I expect additional Trump statements, and I expect they will, at least in part, follow the Russian playbook. So in that respect, I would say that Trump is Putin's man in Washington. End of report.